just want to welcome Kent Beck again. So this is Kent's third visit to South Africa. He came here in 2005, and in 2005 we launched the Joburg Center for Software Engineering at WITS, of which I'm director. And Kent was our first international guest who came and he shared with us. He had recently-ish had written his very famous books on extreme programming, and he came and he shared his thoughts on agile with the South African community. And I think it's no exaggeration to say that that visit from Kent had such a powerful influence on our local development community in terms of adopting the thinking around agile. And 10 years after that, in 2015, Kent visited us again as one of the keynote speakers at our very wonderful Agile Africa conference. And he again made a huge impact in 2015 at the conference. He blew people away with his insights and what he had to say. And we were really excited when he indicated that he's on a bit of a sabbatical from Facebook. He was traveling through Africa, and he said he'll come and spend a couple of weeks with us in South Africa again. So that's why he's here. He's been to Nigeria and been to Kenya, and now he's with us. This week we're running something with the inspiring name of the Kent Beck project, which I invented, very good at that. Kent Beck project is based on the principle of random hacks of kindness. So we've got a team of 5 teams of developers, some of them are here, and they're working this week on developing stuff that will have some positive social impact. Kent's here, he's advising, he's coaching, he's listening, he's learning and they're learning, and we hope by Saturday these groups will have something to pitch. If there's any really great stuff that comes out of it, we'll open source it, and it will then become part of stuff that goes on beyond Kent's visit. He's also going to Cape Town next week. And then I just finally want to say that this has all been made possible by a number of sponsors. So Standard Bank, BBD, Microsoft, and Cybergate all put money in to make this happen, just to cover our costs so we could run these events for free. And then Kent's visit to Cape Town next week will be organized and sponsored by ThoughtWorks. So they've come together, they've helped us do this, and we really thank all our sponsors. If they're here, please pass back to your management and whoever signed the check. Thanks for this. But if I can hand over to Kent. Thanks.
In between times that I see Prof. Berry, I forget how frightening he is, because he speaks so slowly and calmly and with a beautiful accent that you don't notice that his iron claws have reached out and grabbed you in a vice-like grip and dragged you into his dreams, and you're part of it, and you just don't even realize that it happens because it all happens so smoothly. So thank you again for that, Prof. Berry. I came back sooner than 10 years. You were kind enough to say that I've had a big impact on South African software development. I'm hoping that by coming back 1 year later, maybe this trip won't have quite so much impact. And we'll just see what happens with that stuff. I need to warn you, what I'm going to talk about tonight is a can't unsee concept. 7 months ago, the lightning bolt hit me, and I put some pieces together, questions that I spent 20 years not asking that I really should have asked about sooner. And as soon as this hit me, I can't see situations in software development, in my own artistic endeavors, in lots of spheres of life. I can't see them the same way I saw them before. So the doors are not locked. You're welcome to escape now if you need to, but otherwise we're along for the ride. So I'll be talking about something I call 3X, and I'll explain why it's called 3X in a minute. And it is an idea that's a combination of two ideas. There aren't really new ideas in the world. The choreographer George Balanchine said, there are no new steps in dance, there are only new combinations. And I believe that to be true. So anytime I'm looking for an idea, it's really going to be the collision of two things. So, first idea, just to give you a sense of the pace at which I work, the dizzying pace at which I work. 6 years ago, I heard a podcast at which an economist, sometimes it's 10, sometimes it's 15 years. So, fortunately, I'm working on a lot of things at once, so it seems like things happen faster. I heard an economist describe the difference between two kinds of investments. So, in the first kind, you make a small investment, and now if we took the payoff for that investment and we sorted it with the smallest on this side, we would see that most of the time we lose our entire investment, and then every once in a while we win big. So this is like a lottery ticket or venture capital. Most of the time, a lottery ticket is actually a little piece of hope. That's what you buy with lottery, because you're losing money, but you're gaining a little bit of hope until the end of the week. So that's that kind of investment. And if you're investing with this profile of payoffs, if you can find a way to make twice as many investments for the same amount of money, you create twice as much value. So the creating value here is all about more investments for the same amount. So here we don't have anything to lose. Like this is, we have to make a small investment, we lose it, we don't really care. Contrast that with the situation where you make a large investment, and again, if we sorted the payoffs, most of the time we're going to make a small return, and then every once in a while we're going to lose a whole bunch. So this is like commercial banking. You make a bunch of loans. Most of the time you make a few percent on the spread between what you pay and what you get in interest. But every once in a while, a bank that you count on goes bust, and then you go bust, and a bunch of other banks go bust, and it's a really, really bad day to be a banker. So in this situation, we want to be careful about the investments that we make. If we can do something to buy insurance so that we only lose half as much, we create much more value. If we can avoid making this investment entirely, then we create a bunch more value. But here we have nothing to lose. Here we have a lot to lose. And we have to make our investment decisions very, very differently. Now, if I'm standing, this is part of what took me 6 years to figure out. This is called convex. Because if I'm standing right here and I look up at this payoff, it looks convex to me. Now, I kept trying to look at it from this, and it's 6 years. I'm really bad at spatial reasoning. That kind of, if I see the arrows, I'm in an elevator and I see the arrows pointing out and the arrows pointing in, I never know which one to push to make the doors close, because I can't figure out whether it's what I want them to do or what they're already doing. That's why this took me so long. And if I'm standing here and I'm looking up at this, then this looks concave. Okay, so that's idea number one. Idea number two is roughly 20 years ago, we took a wooden stake and we drove it into the heart of the waterfall development process. Turns out that wasn't good enough. We didn't pound it in deep enough. We should have burned the corpse and scattered the ashes, and we were just dancing around happy that it was dead. It's back. And it's not, here's like back in the day when I looked at waterfall, and this is so incredibly inefficient and ineffective and inhumane. Like, this is just, I was about to say the question I'm supposed to ask. I just thought it was morons. Now I'm seeing smart people. Now they use different words. So they say market analysis, and then business model planning, and then they say implementation. Now, thanks to us, testing's no longer part of the process. We just roll stuff out and test it live. But it's analysis, designed, implementation, and we get the users to test for us. At least we've lowered the users' expectations far enough that we can get them to test for us. So that's progress, but it looks like the waterfall. And here's the question that I didn't ask 20 years ago that I should have asked. Instead of just thinking like a punk does, well, those people are stupid, I should have asked, what problem are they solving? And I never asked that question. And I was going around doing my usual business one day, and it just hit me. This convex concave stuff and waterfall. XP is primarily intended, it's confused, I'll explain that in a second. It's confused, but it's primarily intended for convex situations. And the waterfall is a poor approach, but it's trying to solve concave situations. It's trying not to lose in some situation. You have a big system, if you get it right, like say you're replacing some legacy system. You've got this big system. If it goes bad, it goes really bad. I mean, there's cases of companies going bankrupt through this kind of process. So you want to avoid the downside. The potential upside is small, so you're more interested in risk mitigation and efficiency than you are in innovation. That's the problem that they're trying to solve. So it's not that the waterfall is stupid. It's that it's trying to solve a different problem than I was trying to solve. And so I put those two pieces together, and my friend Thiago Harai said, hey, wait a minute, it looks like those two curves kind of go together. And it's actually a graphical non sequitur, but it's okay. If you look at the life of any product or service, you get this sigmoid curve, this S-shaped curve. In the early days, you don't know where you're going to get value. You happen upon something that really works. It grows very rapidly. And then comes this period of diminishing returns, which is still very valuable because it's where you're actually making money. We like these people, even if we're not one of them. We need somebody on the team who's doing this. And so this is not news. This is like one of my friends posted a picture of he's a serious amateur bread maker. I don't know if you know any serious amateur bread makers. I'm not joking about the serious part. Oh man, it's like being in a chemistry lab, but the bread's really good, so it's fine as long as I don't have to make it. He posted a picture of rising bread, like the volume of bread over time, and it looks exactly like this. So this kind of curve shows up all over the place. Now, it kind of looks like this is time, but that's not how I think about this. I think about this as some measure of success. So let's say you're building an app, and this is the number of users that you have on the app. As you progress, the payoff you're looking for, whatever that is, typical one is money. but I'll get into other examples where money is not the payoff. At first, you find something and more people are using it and more people are using it, but you're still not making any money. And then you find that positive feedback loop where the more valuable your product is, the more valuable your product is. So Facebook, the next person who comes to Facebook makes Facebook more valuable for the next person who comes to Facebook. Now, we do have a natural limit at 7 billion people on the planet. So we're going to have to do, I don't know, planetary colonization or faster than light networking so we can get extraterrestrials or something. But that's the kind of diminishing returns. Getting those last 500 people on the planet Earth back onto Facebook is going to be a real challenge, but we'll get there. And what makes digital goods so valuable is this positive feedback loop. If I go build a mile of road, the second mile of road that I build is I might learn something so it costs 98% as much as the first mile. But in software, I can build a feature, and if I see some pattern in that feature and I automate something or I create some abstraction, the next feature that I build might be half the cost, and it might be 5% of the cost, and it might be 1% of the cost. There's this magic positive second derivative. So it's going faster and faster, which is like, it scales like nothing else. No other technology, which is why I love being involved in technology. Okay, so we've got this curve. We're searching for this trigger for this positive feedback loop where the more successful we are, the more successful we are. And here's what struck me. Remember here we have nothing to lose, and so we can try crazy ideas. And here we have a lot to lose, so we have to preserve what we've gained. Transfer that over to this picture. There's this early stage that I call explore. And when you're exploring, if I just take the lessons from this analogy and drop them down here, what I'm doing here are experiments. I'm looking for some connection between success and payoff. And the connection is going to be a surprise. Now, let's take, for example, photos tagging at Facebook. I think it's probably the most profitable feature in software history because it was a handful of lines of code. And again, with the two ideas together, right? Facebook had crappy photos and real identities. And somebody just went, do you want to tag your friends in this photo? Just implemented that. And it was the combination of those two things, real identities and photos. And now, the more photos there were, that was quick. The more photos there were, the more tagging there was, and the more tagging there was, the more photos there were, and the more photos there were, the more tagging. And now Facebook has 1 trillion photos, and almost all of the non-professional photo sites are out of business. But that happened not because somebody said, oh, photos tagging, 1 trillion photos, I got it. No, it was a complete goof. It was just some person implementing something, and it turned out to have these emergent effects. Oh, of course, if you go back today and you say, well, did you think photos tagging was going to be big? Oh, I knew this was the big one. Yeah, sure, but you also knew this was the big one about the 20 previous goofs that didn't do anything. So success here is always going to be a surprise. Your intuition does not serve you in exploration. Because the thing that really triggers growth is going to be a surprise. So if you think of something and, well, this is a great idea, then it's probably not a good idea. You can forget it. If you think of something and you think, well, this is really stupid, let me take a messaging app and I'll erase the messages after 24 hours. Well, how hard is that to experiment with? Because it's so ridiculous, right? You send messages because you want to be able to read them again later. And yeah, I mean, that's what makes sense. Snapchat. But apparently that ephemerality plus messaging, you put them together and you spark another positive feedback loop that your parents can't understand. But there you have it. So the best behavior here is to try things that you can't see how they're going to work, but if you can make trying them cheap enough, you don't care. You should try very diverse sets of ideas. If if everything's all around the same area, you're missing big parts of the opportunity. Time here is very stretchy. You don't know, God help you if your first idea works. Because if your first idea works, then you think you're smart. And you were just lucky. And there's no more dangerous person than somebody who is just lucky and thinks they're smart. So you want to go through some stuff. Like the best story is we had a week's money left before the police were going to come and seize all the equipment. So we had to do something crazy. And there was this dumb idea that we'd never tried. And we thought, well, what do we have to lose? And we tried it, and now we're PayPal. That's how PayPal. So you're looking for that kind of thing in exploration. You can't predict how long anything's going to take because you've never implemented any of this stuff before, but you can time box. So you can say, well, we have this question, how do users behave if we do X? We're going to give ourselves a week to find out. If Friday comes, then the answer's no, this doesn't work. So you can manage time here, but you can't predict how long anything's going to take. Okay, so there's a set of rules that make for efficient, profitable investment when you're here. Now let's jump to the other end, what I call extract, where we're actually making profits. We've scaled, we have 1 million customers, we have money coming in, we have a proven business model. At this point, this is an optimization problem. If we can gradually increase revenue and gradually decrease cost per dollar of revenue, we can make a huge difference in the amount of money we make here. But here, time is predictable. At this point, the example that you gave earlier is a gold mining company sinking a new shaft. The first shaft anybody ever sank in Joburg, they didn't know how long it was going to take. Now, this is shaft 50. Yeah, there's some things that could go wrong, but plus or minus 10%, we know exactly what's going to go on with this. And we know how much we're going to get from it, and so it's an ROI calculation whether we do this. You can't make ROI calculations here. You're just wondering, I don't know, maybe people will love this. So you jump here, you have a lot of experience, you know exactly what's going to go on. So you can estimate. You're looking for economies of scale in extraction. So in the programming world, if you can reduce the number of servers by 10%, that's worth a bunch of programmer time to do that. So the rules, here you want, in Explore, you want a flat cross-functional team. You want a crazy group of an anthropologist and a physics PhD and a musician and a programmer. And we're just we'll explore this stuff because who knows what's going to come out of that. Here, you can have the infrastructure team and you can have several product teams because the efficiencies that you gain inside of infrastructure are multiplied by 10 million customers. So it's worth pursuing these kinds of efficiencies, and if that makes things a little harder for the product people, that's the right way to do the trade-off. Here, if we need some new kind of infrastructure, we should just build something crappy for now, because we don't have any customers yet, so it's really hard to disappoint people you don't have. And then even if you have a few customers and it doesn't work very well, it's fine, we can make it a little bit better. Now, if our little piece of improvised infrastructure, then we scale it. Now we're serving a whole bunch of people inefficiently. Now, this is a great time to crank on that, write all the tests and do all the automation and make everything clean and shiny, because there's immediate payoff to operating more efficiently. So time is different, capital is different. Here you want capital to be scarce. You want to force focus. You want to force people to spend as little as possible on their experiments, because you want as many experiments per dollar as you have. Here, capital is all about ROI. If you can tell me how you're going to make 1.2 million, I'll give you $1 million. I don't have a problem with that, but I have to be pretty sure that's going to be true. So the bigger the problem, the more capital you're willing to put into it, but you have profits coming along to pay for that. So it's like two completely different games. Now I said waterfall is here, which means it's here, and XP is here, which means it's here. And that's what I can't unsee. If somebody asks me, what's the purpose of software quality, or how important is software? Do I have to write tests? There's a great, concrete, simple question. Do I have to write tests? I first have to see, and this is the I can't unsee part, I first have to say, well, where are you? If you're in extraction and we have 400 programmers and integrating lots of things, and every time we have an outage, it costs the company $N,000 per second, do we write tests here? Yes, absolutely, because speed of experimentation is not an issue here. We just don't want to lose what we're gaining, and anything we lose is multiplied by all this 10 million people. If we're exploring, do we need tests? The question is, does it help us explore faster? Usually, the answer is no. Usually, you just hack some stuff together. You're drinking coffee, it's 10 a.m., you're like, what happens if we swap this with that? I don't know. Let's find out. Bang, 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 put it out there, make sure it's instrumented so we can see how people behave. And if we have the answer by lunch, cool. Oh, no, nothing, doesn't matter, delete the code and away we go. Now, we could have carefully crafted that software change and refactored into blah, 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 and it would have taken us a week. And that's like 8 other experiments that we can't run. So here, if I'm programming in PHP or Python, that's fine, because I just want to experiment as fast as I can. Here, yeah, I want to change things to C++ because I'm running on 8,000 servers, and a server is $2,000 a year, and $16 million pays for a lot of programmer time, even if they complain about having to implement stuff in C++. Call it work for a reason, so that's fine. Once I had this put together, I realized something from my Facebook days, which are continuing. Don't worry, guys. That is, that there's a third game in the middle here. And I call that expand, and now you know why I call this the 3X model, explore, expand, extract. There's a set of rules for expanding as fast as you can that are completely different than the rules for exploring and the rules for extracting. Here, now something's taken off, and all of a sudden, the first thing you hear is users complaining because some service has gotten 100 times slower. What happened? We have to go find out. And we've hit some new bottleneck. We may have run out of bandwidth. We may have run out of CPU, memory, disk space. We may have run out of salespeople. We may have run out of space for facilities. There's going to be some bottleneck, and it always looks like there's some supply that's gradually rising, and then there's some demand that's just gone nuts. And the game in its span is you can't anticipate these bottlenecks. This is all some emergent, like, I didn't know network switches behave that way when you tried to pump that many bits through them. Who knew? oh, what are we going to do about that? And then you have to do something. So if you see one of these bottlenecks coming, you try to bend the supply up a little bit, and you try and bend the demand down just enough that the two don't cross over for like the foreseeable future. And now that bottleneck is taken care of, and the next one's going to hit you. And the next one, and the next one. This expand is like the rocket's been lit. You don't know how high it's going to go. It could go right here. It could go really high. Or you could Twitter and come out almost to extract and then crash to Twitter. That's a new verb. It means to mess up one of the largest business opportunities of the last decade. So they expand. Yeah, sorry. If they didn't want that to be used as a verb, they shouldn't have screwed it up. They almost made it. They had a $100 billion business, and they turned it into a $5 billion business. That's a pretty good trick. Anyway, so you can mess this up. But if you kick over to where, okay, I've expanded it as far as I can expand it, and now I'm extracting profits from what I'm doing, that's the big profits. But here, in this process, remember I said capital is scarce, capital is based on ROI. Here, capital is cheap. Because if you can throw money at one of these problems, let's just buy a server for each user. Well, that won't scale, that's fine. By the time we get up here, we'll figure out how to do this efficiently. Right now, we just want to keep growing at 40% per week as long as we possibly can, because who wouldn't? But you can attract venture capital. This is the B round right here. You can attract large amounts of venture capital because, one, you've proven that there's a payoff if you don't mess up. And two, the absolute values here are much, much smaller than the absolute values when you eventually get up here. So yeah, people are willing to do that. I was playing, so let's see if this works. I was playing with this earlier today. There's a payoff for expand 2, which is you make kind of a medium investment, and some of the times you mess up and you lose it all. And then it's really binary payoff. It's like it comes up here. If you don't mess up, you're going to make a bunch of money or a whole bunch of money. Those are your possibilities. And that's why, like, expand is the most precious moment. Here, time's stretchy. It can take you a year to find that spark. Extract, you want to go on for a long, long time. This happens in an eye blink, relatively speaking. When you're in the middle of it, it seems like crazy. You're driving on a road late at night, and a tree falls, and you swerve out of the way, and a deer jumps at antelope. Jumps in the road, and you swerve another way, and a rock rolls in, you swerve another. And then kind of you come out of it, and you're woozy. This happens really, really quickly. But again, the rules are different. Here, you're exploring, you're trying a bunch of different ideas. If you and I go to a conference, and then you go to talk to the guru on a mountain, and somebody else tries some other experiment, that's fine. When you move to expand, you all sit in the same room, and you all focus on the next bottleneck. So the mistakes here is the people not making the transition. So I had an extended Twitter, I'll say conversation today, with somebody who believed that technical debt is always bad. And I disagree based on this model. Here, I don't care if I create technical debt because I'm going to delete it at the end of the day. And then it's not technical debt anymore. You hit expand and you say, oh, I have all this crappy stuff I just threw together. I wish that I'd written this really clean and nicely. Well, if you'd written it really clean and nicely, you would have performed far fewer experiments and you wouldn't even be here. So boo-hoo. Time to hitch up your big boy pants and pay off the debt that makes a difference while you're here. The rules are all different. But one mistake, people love this exploration. This is fun. Hey, there's no downside. I come to my manager, I say, another 3 ideas that didn't work. He says, excellent, get back to work. Well, that's kind of fun. When I hit expand, everybody has to focus on the next bottleneck. But teams don't do that because they like exploring, they like the experimentation. I miss it. Hey, why can't we keep experimenting? Because if you do, you'll Twitter. Don't do that. Focus. See, it works. It works as an ad. I love it. So I'm just going to focus on the next bottleneck, the bottleneck. Then again, there's this not figuring out that expansion's done, it's time to extract. That's a mistake that happens frequently, and that's people running out of money. Big success, never made a dime. Okay, so that's a failure of transition. And then comes the most common one, which is once you do this once, you're gonna have to do it all 3 at the same time. So we have a profitable product, and we need innovation to continue growing. So we start trying out some new stuff. Well, thing is, we figured out how to be successful. We know what the rules are. You estimate everything, and everything should be successful. And if we have dependencies between projects, that's just fine because that creates economies of scale. So that's how we're going to explore. Oh, we're going to produce a new app, which it has to look as good as our previous app, or we'll damage our brand. Let's buy the large shrimp for the launch party. You know, everything we can do that'll make this app more successful, our second app. Well, it's an experiment, just like the version that we scribbled on an index card and showed to somebody at a bus stop has the same exact chance of success as this beautifully made second app that we spent $10 million on. Same probability of success. But people think, we know how to be successful, and they apply extract rules to explore problems, and then they're messed up. I talked to a cell phone provider, and they had a project proposal process. And the template, the word template for the project proposal was 57 pages. No content, just the template. Minimum size of a project, $50 million. Which makes perfect sense in extract. You're making one of these bets. You want to make sure that if you spend 50, you get 55 back. You don't want to lose $1 billion because you made all your customers angry and you lost the entire company. So they had this big, heavy process for new projects. Why can't we have any innovation? Well, duh. If we think of some crazy idea over coffee, let's propose that we do this. How are we going to spend $50 million? I don't know. What are we going to put on the 57 pages of template? We'll just make something up. Like, nobody's going to go through that. So they don't get innovation because they aren't trying crazy enough stuff. The only solution I know is to play these as separate games. And to have a project approval process for extraction that makes sense for this kind of a payoff, and to have a project approval process for exploration that matches this convex payoff. So if we want to get $10,000 to spend a month trying out some crazy idea, that should be like, okay, go for it. You have to come back and tell us how you spent the money and what happened and what you learned, but that's it. It can't be that kind of a big deal. If you enable that, then the people who gravitate towards exploration, and there's different people that gravitate towards these different phases. I'm an explore guy, in case you hadn't guessed. The people who gravitate here are gonna go apply for this little, you just draw a poster and you put it on my desk and I hand you a check for $10,000 and say, come back in 2 weeks and we'll see what happens. The extract people don't mind, they're thinking big thoughts and they don't mind filling out the pages and waiting for the approvals committee process. level sign-off thing to happen, and they'll do that, and that's fine. But the mistake is trying to treat them all as exactly the same. You're welcome to ask questions, interrupt me, whatever, at any time, by the way. So that wasn't clear, yes?
So it seems a lot of the companies are, a lot of people work with R at extract, but it's either going down a cliff or it's slowly regressing. So if you're down a slow regress, it's quite the strategy is difficult.
Yes.
Because
yeah, if you're here, it's easy to...
Those rules don't apply exactly, and those rules don't apply exactly.
Yeah, so one of the first people I showed this to was one of my students at Facebook who said, there's a fourth phase, which is senescence, the inevitable decline to death.
Yeah,
right. You didn't know we were going to have an existential conversation here.
Is that what you're saying?
Well, no, I mean, the right place to start exploring is here.
Yeah.
But people think, the more money we put in, the more money we get out. We don't need to start this. What are you kidding? This is a waste. Over and over again, we try these stupid projects and they just never work. We've tried 10 projects and none of them worked. Well, 10 is not a number in exploration. 10's like warm-ups. But then this kicks over and you start losing customers and you lose payoff, and then eventually you decide, no, it's over, it's all dead. So what my student said, he worked in video games, and this whole cycle takes about 12 months. And his job was to take this curve and move it up a little, but keep some payoff by bundling and discounts and whatever. That was his entire job. I would have difficulty being effective in that environment. I think. So, yeah, this happens, but you really do need to send the explorers out when things are going well, but it's really hard because it's different rules, unless you just treat it as different rules. If you treat it as different rules, you're like, oh, this is an exploration, fine. So we know what to expect. Can you experiment cheaper? That's the question here, not how much are you going to make me and how certain is it. Yes?
Kent, you've explained the transition from explore to extract as an incredibly intense period where it's sort of, you either make it or break it kind of attitude, I think. What about drawing on the sort of the document-driven approaches of the previous era to try to manage the transition from explore to extract? So instead of chaotically just trying to solve problems as they come up, as we scale and things like that, to more deliberately plan for scaling, design for scaling, specify for scaling. In other words, draw on the more traditional
speculative. I would call them speculative approaches.
So you said?
I would call that a speculative approach. In my experience, when expand happens and you hit a bottleneck, there was no way to predict that that was going to be a bottleneck. And it's, at Facebook scale, it's things like, I mean, we have to build all of our own everything for exactly this reason. People will come in, oh, we have this scalable solution for a remote logging, blah, 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 ha, ha, ha. No, you don't, not at our scale. Because the stress that we put on systems, just, there's maybe 4 data centers in the world that can apply those same kind of stresses. So if it's true, like if the bottlenecks are predictable, then I don't have any problem with your approach. In my experience, the bottlenecks are never predictable. So I want to be light on my feet. I want to dodge out of the way of one bottleneck just barely enough. I don't want the perfect solution that's going to last forever. I want to just get out of the way enough that I retain my balance for the next thing that comes, because I don't know what that's going to be. So I think it's a trade-off, and it's about the cost of this improvisational style versus the predictability of the bottlenecks. If you know where the bottlenecks are going to come, then
Then
yeah, sure, do it. And there are times now at Facebook where we launch a product, it's successful, and because the infrastructure for logging and this and that and the others is so robust, scaling just happens automatically. But you can't count on that because you never know when something. All right, no secrets, no secrets, no secrets. Some new feature is going to come out, and all of a sudden you're seeing 1,000 comments per second, and you only ever saw 10 comments per second before. Just for example, as soon as you cross 2 orders of magnitude, I guarantee everything's going to fall over, and you have to find a way to throttle back. That's this demand curve. You can't just treat all comments the way you used to. Like maybe if it's brought the site down, what you do is you just drop 95% of the comments on the floor. Like, that's not good, but it's better than bringing the whole site down. You've brought the demand down temporarily, so you figure out how to bring the supply of commenting back up, and then you can throttle things back up. But this is that kind of, this is where the deep geeks live. This is where the, what's your favorite Linux distro is a reasonable question to ask. Because the solutions to these problems are like, ha ha ha, I happen to know that TCP, handshake, blah, 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 so we can fix this. And you just like, wow, okay, cool, good, do your thing. So this is where the geeks live. This is where the creatives live, and this is where the improvers live.
Can I just add to that, saying,
Yes.
in your terminology, you don't want to overload exploring with too much planning for expansion.
Yes, so you don't want to overload, like carefully preparing for a future that isn't going to happen.
Yeah.
Because every dollar that you spend here is one less experiment, and every experiment you don't perform here is one less chance to succeed.
I'm interested to know, big companies like Facebook, how do you strike the balance between having people that do the explore and the extract? The reason I'm asking is that I find like a lot of big businesses, maybe it's anecdotal, I don't know, they have this thing that you need to start research and development, and some big guy would say it's a waste of money, or you mess up with something that actually works. That type of thing.
Yeah. So this is the, I mean, here the payoff is obvious, and it seems like it's going to go on forever until it doesn't, and then it's a little too late. No, then it's too late, and you just have to get lucky to survive once the downturns happen. So the way Facebook does it is, first, everybody's responsible for a certain amount of exploration. We have hackathons every couple of months. And people just work on random stuff, and if it fails, it just doesn't matter. And it's a matter of pride that people work on it. As we've grown, the participation rate's gone down, which is too bad, but I kind of understand it. We have many more extract people now than we used to. So, hackathons. Another is mobility. People move between teams at Facebook 2-3 times as often as anywhere else that I've ever worked. So what that means is somebody can explore, find something, drive it up a ways, make sure it's handed off to the real geekies, and then go back to explore. They go to another team of 3 people that's just starting to look at whatever new thing. This team's grown to 15, and eventually it's going to be 100. So that kind of mobility where there's no downside to that. Like you're expected to go and find the place at Facebook you can make the biggest impact, and if it's not where you're sitting, then you should get up and walk. So I think that really helps. And the last piece, I reverse engineered this by trying to make sense of Mark Zuckerberg's behavior. There are people inside Facebook who perceive him as being inconsistent. Yeah, that's the nice word for it. Because one day you'll go in and you say, okay, we're trying a bunch of these experiments, and great, super, fantastic. And then the next week you go in and say, well, this one experiment seemed to really work well, but we're trying a bunch more experiments. And then Mark says, you idiot, stop with the experiments and just work on this thing. He goes, wait a minute, last week you've got to get a pat on the head for experimenting, and now you're kicking me in the ass for the same thing? Similarly here, people say, well, we're spending money to scale as fast as we can. And he says, excellent, super. A week later, okay, we're still spending money to scale as fast as we can. What are you doing? Where's your business model? Well, but last week, yeah, where's your business model? So it seems inconsistent. My belief, having watched him for 6 years and being a little bit of a fanboy, is that he has this model in his head, but just a gut feel, and he never articulates it. But this is how he behaves, as if he's looking for an experiment that pops, and then abandon all that confusing stuff and scale this thing as far as it'll go, and then once smells like that hyperscaling is starting to kick over, now let's see how we're going to monetize this. Because I've seen that behavior, that cycle, over and over and over again. So that kind of leadership from the top makes all the difference. Because it's just kind of in the air. Yes?
It's not really risky to expand when you're under pressure, the code is messy, you put something together, there's no standards, you don't have tests. You need to fix something in order to make it work, because this is your critical moment, and you don't know that you're making changes which can break something else.
So the question is, isn't it risky?
To expand under those conditions. So you're working with an unstructured code base. It's really critical time for you because you need to get to that point, over the tipping point. But you need to make changes really fast.
Mm-hmm.
You can't regression test your code because you don't have tests. You don't have coding standards in place.
So the model, I'll blame the model now. The model says that's the best possible situation you can be in. Because the alternative is to have been much more careful and thorough and not even gotten to success at all.
Okay, but don't you think there's a bit of a balance? Maybe Explore could be more of an MVP. So it's a really nice solution, but it's small.
The longer I work with exploration, the smaller my experiments get. The more I learn to appreciate just how filthy I can be as an engineer and still have something that works. Ha! Yeah, you think that's a bad way to implement it. Here's an even worse way that gets it out a day sooner. Ha!
It's not the cost.
Right, but
If
we've got
you-
another
if you-
set of developers
No,
working in
but
stand.
but if you're spending 50,000 Rand on an experiment versus spending 1,000 Rand on an experiment, you don't know if your experiments are good. That's why they're called experiments. You have to, I don't know, how many experiments are you guys running? Thousands.
A lot.
Like that's the big difference. These are not MVPs. You have no idea. This is like the messiest possible thing. Shove it up. Hey, that's working.
So
That's
I'll take an example from my own artistic life, which is music. I have a SoundCloud page. Everybody visit. And if I want to know, so I'm in Explore as a musician. I kind of came out of the closet after 30 years of practicing. And I don't know what people are interested in hearing. So I could take one song, my favorite song, and I could go to a professional recording studio, and I could hire studio musicians and an engineer and have a song that's done so beautifully it's ready to go on the radio, except nobody wants it on the radio. Or I could press record on GarageBand on my iPhone, play the song, upload it to SoundCloud, and see how people behave. Now, you might say, yeah, but if your crappy versions gets played on the radio, people will think, oh, Kent Beck, he's the person who records stuff on his iPhone. You have to scramble. Now, okay, now I gotta find whatever recording studio I can, and bring whatever musicians I can, and do a better version, and now that one's playing on the radio. You might say, well, yeah, but can't you just avoid that by carefully recording the first one? Well, yeah, I could, except in the time it takes me and the money it takes me to record that one demo, I could have recorded 20 demos of my voice in a lower register and in a higher register, and with electric guitar and with acoustic guitar and maybe something without vocals and a reggae thing and a. If I can string all those together, my chances of having some kind of a hit as a musician, where my definition of hit is quite a bit smaller than most people's, but that's part of it, is much, much greater. And then if I have to scramble to catch up, hallelujah, I win. So I turned my head around. I recognize, okay, there's extraction behavior, and it's all about efficiency and about this is going to live a long time, and I want to refactor the hell out of everything, and I want to test the hell out of everything, because that's going to pay off, because it's going to be here for a long time. Ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. That's one way I can look at the world. But if I'm in this situation where I don't know that connection between success and payoff, I need to switch my head around. I need to put on this explorer hat, the floppy one with the kind of Harrison Ford thing. Looks pretty good on me, by the way. I need to change my hats and behave in this different way, because this is chess, checkers, and go. It's 3 different games with 3 different rules. And if you ask me, well, what's my next move? I have to say, which game are you playing? And I'm going to behave very differently depending on where I am. Does that answer your question? I don't. Yeah, I'm not asking, are you happy with my answer? I'm asking.
To an extent.
Okay, good. In the back.
Oh, hi. So, don't you think a waterfall model compared to the agile model since now is a DevOps model, which is like mostly encouraging a development operation in the same time? So do you think the introduction by Facebook of the digital signature would hinder the DevOps model, or will continue to favor the waterfall model? Or
So let me make sure I understand the question, and then I don't think I do, so that you can tell me I'm wrong. So this DevOps model, how does DevOps model work in this environment? Is that what you're asking?
yeah, mostly like it's favor agile model compared to waterfall.
So I think Agile is a very different beast. So I'm going to answer those separately if that's okay. DevOps, here, yeah, you should be operating your own machines because you don't want to, oh, I queued that up. Haven't you pushed that production yet? No, this is like, we make a change, you change it live, there's nothing to lose, so you don't worry about it. Here, if you have a lot to lose, here's where some separation of concerns is valuable, but I still want the programmers to have primary responsibility for operations. Like if my service goes down, I want my phone to ring because I want to align authority, my authority to change the service, and responsibility, my responsibility to keep it running. So DevOps, I think, here it makes sense. Here it makes sense, although there will be some more centralized services, but still I want my phone to ring if my service goes down. In Expand, I don't have a good answer if there's some kind of transition. The Agile one, Agile makes the same mistake that XP made, which is it tries to be the rules for chess, checkers, and go. There's these 3 different games with 3 completely different rules, and Agile development is the strategy for chess, checkers, and go. It just doesn't make sense. They're different. And XP too. Right? Like weekly iterations is good for exploration. Well, used to be good for exploration. Now I'd probably do some kind of planning every day. Pair programming is great for generating creativity. Continuous integration is great for getting experiments out there quickly in ways that don't interfere with each other. So a lot of XP is really good for exploration. Some of the stuff, the heavy emphasis on testing, the heavy emphasis on refactoring, all have long-term benefits which don't make sense if there's no long term.
Are
So,
tools and processes more important than people in extract?
are tools and processes more important than people in extract? No, I don't.
Okay.
Yeah, at that level, it's the same.
Okay.
But, for example, XP has these five values. Simplicity, feedback, communication, courage, and respect, right? Courage makes great sense in Explore. I don't know, let's try it. Courage is stupid, is suicidal in a concave situation. All of a sudden, a bunch of the criticisms I got for XP make perfect sense to me. Like if you're running this billion-dollar business and people are going, well, I don't know, try it and see. I want them off the premises, escorted by security if necessary, because courage is not a valuable resource here. Now, when you jump back, you know, it's an extract, you jump back to Explore, all of a sudden courage is a great thing to have once again. So, the first thing I want to do when I see any kind of development situation is orient myself, which phase am I in, and that tells me what I'm going to value most. Because here I want to value creativity, and I want to value craziness, and I want to value concision, how little effort I can put in to answer a question. And that's a completely different set of values than what I appreciate in extraction. Yes?
I'm still bothered by the expand stage.
Okay.
You made a comment that you said that during the expand is the time to pay off some technical debt.
Mm-hmm.
But is that really feasible? If the expand phase is characterized by think on your feet, adapt quickly with an unpredictable bottleneck or whatever confronts you, are you really in a position to pay off technical debt, or are you not likely to incur even more because of that kind of rapid reaction to the challenges that confront you during the expand stage?
Okay. I think it's a fair question. The places I've seen teams fail in expansion and fail because of technical debt reasons is because they continued to explore. So if they're running a bunch of experiments and you've hit a bottleneck and you say, well, we really need to clean this up, or this is going to be a bottleneck, this is just going to bite us again next month. And the priority is set. I'm not going to blame any particular person or role for this priority. The priority is set, no, we have to run these experiments. We don't have time to clean it up. Then you have a problem. If you can say, hey, and this happened to me, one of the first teams I talked to at Facebook about this, where they moved to expand and there was still demand for more experiments. And I told the engineers, just say no. Say no, experimentation, that's closed for the moment. Once we nail a bunch of bottlenecks and we're back up here, we can experiment all we want for further incremental improvement. Well, we're not going to risk this product just for the sake of running some more experiments that might give us a few more % here and there and not be able to continue this growth path. So if you're trying to run both of them at the same time, then there's this nasty resource contention. In expand, I want to get rid of technical debt that's part of a bottleneck, but is not because it offends my aesthetic sensibilities for really practical purposes. In extract, I don't mind indulging my aesthetic sensibilities because they're actually a pretty good predictor of long-term payoff. But here I just want, I want to clean up just enough debt to get out of the way of this, but not, I'm going to spend 2 months rewriting this thing and die in the meantime. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, cool. Yes?
Okay, so this model, it's to me, it's a beautiful model, but a little bit confusing.
Okay.
Especially in terms of where do you apply it. For example, you have startups, right, which exploring makes sense. And we have this software development houses which solve problems for people, right? And you might also have like universities where like people are doing research which exploring as well apply. So what's confusing for me is where does this model basically work well. So could it be, to me, it would work well when you are on a startup, but in a software development house, which I think my sister here, it confused her as well, is when you have a problem to solve and you are exploring. Because like when you start exploring, you don't know whether you're gonna solve the problem or not. So now to me it's a little bit confusing when it gets to that point, because exploring means you don't know what's gonna be the outcome of what you do. So, but then if
You say that like it's a bad thing.
no, I'm not saying like it's a bad thing. I just want you to kind of like enlighten me in my confusion.
Can I respond to that?
Okay.
Sure.
So if you're in the space where you kind of got a client and you now know that you're building software for someone, you now define the problem. So your exploration isn't in building some new piece of software, your exploration is in what is the solution to the problem that I'm trying to solve. So you're not exploring, oh, it might be cool to put the search box there, it might be cool to put this button there. It's the customer has an issue that the search is too slow. You're now exploring what is the best way to do the search and hitting through iterations of that solution.
Even if that improved search performance is going to give you a 4% increase in revenue. So here's what you saw that you didn't know how to say is if I take this segment of this curve, this is going to be constructed out of a bunch of little S curves. So if we looked at this as the life of a company, inside the company, there are going to be products. And inside the products, there are going to be features. And inside the features, there are going to be test cases. And every one of them follows this. Each test case is one of these. You're thinking, well, what are the answers really? And what should the API be? Oh, I get it. Make it work, make it work. Now I do some cleanup, refactor. Good, now I start the next one. So that, now if you integrate a whole bunch of test cases, then you have a feature. But at that scale, the feature is, let's try this, let's try that. Okay, this works, da-da-da-da, now I'm finished. Here's a product. Here's a company. Here's an industry. So this is the fractal nature of this. So even though I'm in extraction for my client who wants search to go twice as fast to increase revenue 4%, I still don't know exactly how I'm going to do it. So I'm going to have to do some exploration, but it's exploration at a much smaller scale. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
So to me, it seems.
Whoa. Go ahead.
So just want to ask, if you're looking at large corporations, right, I can see like where this thing could fit in, but I'm just concerned with the current model that they have. So if you look at especially banks, this is where I've seen this, they'll have a small innovation unit that's somewhere isolated from the main big thing, right? I'm just wondering, does that not create like an isolated culture? So you have the cuckoo guys coming up with nice ideas, but then maybe some of their ideas could have been more useful in a particular department. So my thing is that it seems like it would be more useful to have the cuckoo guys sort of running through the organization, so they get to explore in a particular department. Once they finish that, they move over to another department and so on and so on. And then you get different guys essentially in different phases for different projects, as opposed to saying you're going to have a separate innovation department and then a separate, the standard bureaucracy, if I can call it like that. What's your feeling? What should be the right model?
First, I think you just described your ideal job description. True or false? Yeah, don't slump down. True or false?
No, it is true.
Okay, thank you. Just checking. So I think it's trade-offs. There's no solutions, only trade-offs. And the trade-off is if you have the cuckoo guys off there, they have some protection from being killed. Your entire organization, everything, where people sit, where the buildings are, what the org structure is entirely built to operate this at maximum efficiency, which means anybody behaving like this is not operating at maximum efficiency, and your organization is designed to kill that as quickly as possible. One way to avoid that is to put the cuckoo guys off in a corner. someplace. Put a little fence around them, throw meat over the wall, daily deliveries of biltong, you know, and then everybody's happy. I don't think that's the only way to do it. I think that there's, having seen Zuck do this for 6 years, there's a way of running all three of these in the same place with fluid motion between teams that still delivers innovation, that successfully navigates expansion and all of its crazy bottlenecks and the sudden, like in expansion, all of a sudden you need a Unix expert and all the Unix experts are booked. Well, too bad. This trumps everything. Because if you look at the area of profitability here is this tiny thing, the area of profitability here is this tiny thing, and the area of profitability here is this gigantic space. So expansion trumps everything. And at Facebook, with the mobility and with the personal responsibility, that actually does happen. So I think that it's possible to run all three of these in one organization, in one organizational structure. It's a little speculative on my part, but with one performance review kind of process. Currently, anyway, I already said too much. So I think it's possible, but like if you look at Innovator's Dilemma, Clay Christensen says, put the crazy guys off in the corner, because otherwise they're just going to get killed. If they look like they're any good, they're just going to get co-opted. Oh, I need him just for a day. I'll bring him right back, I promise. And now you're producing 1% per month instead of a 1 in 1,000 chance at 10,000 to 1 payoff. And that's how that happens. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, just a final thing, you can
Yes?
give me a short answer on this. So then when it comes to assessing their performance, they would have to have different metrics with it. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Yeah, here it's about, were you creative enough? Were you efficient with the time for experiments? Did you did you squeeze the maximum learning juice out of each experiment? There's no such thing as a failed experiment. Like there's an outcome you hope for and an outcome you don't hope for. As long as you learn something, you can't fail at an experiment, if that's true. So in the Lean Startup, they talk about innovation accounting, I believe is the phrase. So they try to make it look like the accounting you do here, even though it's completely different. But somehow you have to do it.
As an accountant, I can say that's the first mistake.
Okay.
Usually accountants into exploration we did.
Okay. Yes.
To me, it seems to expand. It's actually a point of contention. And the reason is, at least I interpret it as a phase or stage where it's a make or break. So a small startup can be forced to become an organization there. And they don't have a business running skills. They don't have a management skills, that type of thing. That's where a whole lot of goods can come out, or just very quickly. So I think it warrants a bit more for you to get into it in terms of that, because I can see a small, let's say you're writing a mobile app, you're busy churning out mobile apps. And for some reason, one of the apps, there's a market for it, people like it. And now you've got 500,000 users, and it keeps crashing.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a dilemma in a way. Like it can be, your success can be your enemy as well in that stage.
Sure, but that's what success looks like at that point. So you build a bunch of apps, they don't scale, you build one, now you have 500,000 users, but the app's crashing all the time. Because you just never had that many different versions of Android to run on, or who knows what the bottleneck is. Well, that's your bottleneck. Oh, it doesn't work on all the versions of Android. That means we have to beef up testing, and we have to carefully isolate the code that's version specific and whatever. Bring that crash rate down. Whew. Oh no, our servers are melting. Then it's the next thing, then it's the next thing, then it's the next thing. I think probably the reason that I'm not as clear about expansion is I've lived in exploration my whole career. I've been around extraction a lot. I've never been at a company that repeatedly executed on expansion the way way Facebook does. So I can see that, I've seen it happen 5, 6 times, and that's not near enough for little old me to figure out what the patterns are and what's really going on. The only, like this diagram is the closest I come. You're gonna die, and then you avoid dying, and then you're gonna die, and you avoid dying. That's pretty much it. Yes?
So I mean, if you have a product that's at the extraction phase, and there's a need to innovate to create a new feature that sort of reintroduces life into this product. I mean, how would you approach that if you're busy trying to, in the long run, for your product, trying to introduce new features? Would you do it as like in the waterfall way, or would you go down back to the exploration phase? I mean, what's
yeah, good question. So the question is, I'm in extraction, I want to introduce new features. Where does that come from? How do you? You want a 5% boost in revenue, or a 10% increase in sign-up rate when you get to this stage of the funnel, or whatever. You're making incremental changes. Where does that come from? Well, so the first answer is, you've got a lot of experience by this time. You've sunk 49 mine shafts, this is the 50th one. So it's not like it's a complete surprise the way it was a complete surprise here. So some of that, like everybody, the backlog is already huge. Right? It's just going to be huge, and you have to sort it. Do you use Kanban and whatever? That does completely irrelevant. But just trying to piss off a few agile people. Let's see what happens in the comments. So where do the ideas come from? Well, once you start working on a feature, maybe then you go to the next scale down and you try this and you try that, and this is the most promising one. So that's what you add.
But I mean, are you going to be delivering at the rate at which you would deliver in exploration? Because
so from in queuing theory terms, here you care about latency. We have a question, we want to answer it as quickly as possible. Here, you care most about throughput. Every feature we add adds some value, so we want the most features per dollar.
Absolutely.
And in between, you care about variance. If some features you add, you can do quickly, and some really critical changes you just can't make, then you die.
It actually seems more like throughput is in the expand and variance is in extract.
So the reason I say it this way is here, you've got this giant backlog, and you have a pretty good reason to believe that every feature you add is either going to reduce costs or increase revenue. So the more of those I can do per dollar, the more money I make. In expansion, it's not how many bottlenecks you can avoid. It's whether you can avoid them at all. And every bottleneck you avoid puts you that much higher up on the ladder when you actually go to monetize it. So, and maybe it's not a perfect fit. You're welcome to write a note about this and explain how I'm wrong, and I would love to read that.
So I'm going to just chip in. You've been talking for an hour and a half. I'm sure you get tired. There's some snacks upstairs, and I don't want to cut the conversation, but I think we could move into a sort of informal. But I just want to ask if there is anyone that hasn't had a chance to ask a question that wants to ask a question. Is there someone with a burning question that's trying to say something to answer?
You asked one.
You've asked one. So let's, is there someone that hasn't had their voice heard?
Not to distract from the snacks, just a slightly different analogy to all of that, and it comes back to the earlier question, the problem that's been asked. So one of the statements I make is, if houses or buildings are made like software, none would stand up. And so at some other stage, you've got to put down and address your fundamental foundations on which you're now adding more and more. And I guess that goes into the expansion side of things.
It's worth starting.
Or could one just have it as a very formal part of your extract? So that's where your refactoring is going to go in. In order for me to make this change, in order for me to bring on this feature quickly, throughput, I'm sort of partly answering my own question. As you go into the throughput mode and you start looking at throughput, you need to look at what technical debt inhibits your throughput. Okay. So now thinking is
fantastic, and I didn't have to spend any energy, so thank you very much.
Wait, so you're saying architectures are extra?
No, you asked the question already, and I'm hungry. So I'll be happy to address it.
Okay, so let's go upstairs. You can climb up these stairs or go up those stairs to the deck above us. You can get some food and Kent's around. So